The Bird Maiden. From Japan to South America, from the Smith Sound Eskimos to the reciters of the 1001 Nights, the theme of the maiden who becomes a bird through wearing a magical costume, and how she can be trapped by stealing it, is a part of folklore, defying all attempts at tracing it to a single source. There are few myths in which so many of the details accord with such mysterious consistency. The maiden alights from the sky, usually to have a bath. She puts off her bird cloak and is seen to be wondrously beautiful. The young man steals her dress, courts her, and she marries him. Many of the subsequent adventures of the couple are also similar, especially her flight escape and return to her human home. The greatest German epic, the Nibelungenlied of the 13th century, features the Swan Maidens, both magical and wise, later the subject of the mighty Wagnerian epic The Ring. Once again, at the very heart of a national literature, we find the humble folk tale, read and studied as a classic, admired as a great literary and artistic work, yet still recited by Swedish hunters, Japanese fishermen, and American Indians. Race, religion, customs, social organization, and almost every mental attitude may differ among the world's peoples, but the odds are that they will know the Bird Maiden tale. You may not speak Swahili, Magyar, Tamil or Russian, Persian or the Erse of Ireland, but the people who do, and who know nothing of each other, know this story. According to the best anthropology, many of them have not been in cultural contact, at least for many thousands of years. In a number of versions, the magical instruments of the cloak of invisibility, the cap of knowledge, and the shoes of swiftness are included in the saga. The maiden is very often supernatural, though she may be, as in the Syrian cognate, merely the possessor of a magical green silk robe. Varieties also have her transforming herself by means of a wolf skin, as in Croatia, a seal skin, as in the Shetland Islands, or with white robes, as in Sweden. In Kurdistan, the daughter of the magical bird Simurg is the heroine. In Greece, it is the Nereids. In Bulgaria, the Samodivas. And in Hungary, Fairy Elizabeth. The mysterious maiden is often the daughter of a king of spirits, and comes from the skies. She may be disguised merely as an unspecified beautiful bird. Sometimes, as in Russia, she is a swan. Sometimes, as in Finland, a goose. In both the Celebes and Bohemia she is a dove, to the Magyars a pigeon. Our version is the famous one of Hassan of Basra from the Arabian Nights. Perhaps one of its oddest coincidences is that the home of the mysterious lady is in the islands of Wak-Wak, which does not sound totally unlike Arawak, the name of the widespread community of South American Indians, who have a legend of a strangely similar sort. In this, there is a magical bird maiden, daughter of the king of supernatural beings, flying warrior birds who accept the young man who finds them as one of themselves. Is there a relationship between the medieval Arabian story and the very ancient and at that time undiscovered Arawak people of America? If not, how do they come to share the same tale, even if the Wak-Wak-Arawak similarity is a coincidence? Once upon a time there lived, in the city of Basra, a young jeweller who had inherited enough from his father to set himself up in a good way of business. He was sitting in his shop one day looking at a book when a stranger entered. Hassan did not know it, but this man was a magician, and he had a deep plot in his mind. First he gained Hassan's friendship by praising the workmanship of the jewelry on display. Then, looking at Hassan's book, he said, "I have another book here, something which will be of great interest to you as a goldsmith." He took out an ancient tome with a silver clasp and gold edges to the pages. "What does it contain?" asked the jeweler. "The secret of how to make gold," said the magician. "Could you teach me how to make it?" asked Hassan, who, of course, was by now deeply impressed and interested. The magician put his fingers to his lips and said, "Hassan, as I like you and I have no son of my own, I shall teach you. I will come tomorrow and we can talk again." The young man could hardly believe his ears, and he could scarcely sleep for thinking about the magician. He seemed such a venerable old man. Surely there could be no harm in just seeing whether he could make gold or not, Hassan asked himself. The following day, when it was time for him to open his shop, Hassan saw the magician standing outside. Hassan let him in and sent his servant for tea. Then the magician whispered, "Start a fire and put a crucible on it, and we will start the gold making." Hassan did as he was told, and the magician asked him for some copper. He heated and then melted the metal in the crucible. Then he took a small paper packet from his turban and sprinkled powder from it onto the liquid copper. This powder was a golden yellow, and Hassan worked the bellows with all his might and main to keep the fire's heat strong enough to maintain the liquid nature of the alloy. As he watched, it turned into the color of pure gold. As soon as it was cold, the magician said, "Now for the test. Take this lump of gold to the market and see what an independent goldsmith will give you for it, after he has applied all the necessary tests. Then you will know whether I tell the truth or not. Sell the gold and bring the money back here." Hassan took the gold and received 20,000 pieces of silver for it. Such was its great mass and purity. When he went back to the shop, the magician said, "Keep the money and do what you will with it." Hassan, overjoyed, took the money and gave it to his mother, who, however, warned him, "Foolish boy, have you not remembered what I have always told you about greed and trusting total strangers who say they have something to give you?" But Hassan would not listen, and he rushed back to his shop, where the magician was sitting. Hassan and the magician became great friends, and the old man again demonstrated, this time at Hassan's house, how the gold was made. Eagerly, Hassan asked him for a supply of the powder. "Alas," said the magician, "that is the last of the powder, but I will give you the list of ingredients." He recited a number of names of chemicals and herbs, and Hassan memorized them. Then the magician gave Hassan a piece of drugged sweetmeat, and he fell insensible to the floor. As soon as he saw that Hassan was unconscious, the magician filled some empty chests with everything he could lay hands on in the room, and cried out, "Dog of an Arab, at long last I have found you, and now you will do my will." He called porters, and they removed chests containing the valuables, and one with Hassan inside, to the docks, where a chartered ship lay at anchor. "Captain," shouted the magician, "up anchor and away! We have attained our desire." Before long, they were far away from the port of Basra. When Hassan's mother returned and found the house empty of valuables and her son gone, she knew it was something to do with the magician. When neighbors came in to console her, for she was weeping and wailing, she said, "I shall never see my son again. I will make a tomb here in my courtyard with his name upon it, and mourn him the rest of my life." She tore her clothes, lamenting continually. On board the magician's ship, Hassan slowly came to his senses. He was kicked and cuffed by the crew, scarcely knowing where he was. Suddenly the magician appeared before him, shouting excitedly, "By the moon and stars, I have wonderful work for you to do when we reach land. Now have no fear, for you are as my son." "Where are we going?" asked Hassan, but he was given no reply. Hassan was fed on bread and water, and after a few more days at sea, felt no fear, but waited for what fate had in store. The voyage lasted for several months. Hassan knew that by the waning and waxing of the moon, and finally they all disembarked in a beautiful green harbour. "My son," said the magician, "forgive me for abducting you. It was for your own good." The captain and crew were paid off and sailed away. Only Hassan and the magician were left on the shore. The old man played a tattoo on a small drum, and at once, from a cloud of dust, 3 she-camels appeared. "Mount," cried the magician, "we have far yet to ride." Then with Hassan on one camel, the old man on another, and the third loaded with provisions, they set off. After days of hard riding, they dismounted at a stream to water the camels, and Hassan saw a fine palace with gold cupolas. "What is that place?" asked Hassan as he and the old man ate. "Do not ask me. It is the home of an enemy of mine. Come, we must go," said the magician shortly, and soon they were travelling again. For 7 more days they rode, and at last reached a towering mountain crested with snow. "Here we are, the mountain of the clouds," said the magician. "There on the mountain grows something which helps me to make gold. I need some of that, and you will get it for me. Together we shall make enough gold to fulfill all our desires." "Yes," agreed Hassan, for now he had fallen completely under the old man's spell. There was a place on the mountainside, and the magician said, "See that place? It is the home of spirits, the Jann, ghouls, and devils." The old man then killed one of the camels, and wrapping Hassan in its skin, commanded him to stand on the open mountainside. "But what will become of me?" Hassan asked with a tremor of fear. "The rooks will come and carry you up to the top of the mountain to a great nest, and you can cut your way out of the camel skin with this knife. Frighten the rooks, and you can then do as I will tell you." "What are the rooks?" Hassan wanted to know. "Enormous birds who can easily bear you up there. They will think you are a camel and wish to feed on you. However, scare them off when you get there by waving your arms and shouting, and throw me down some of that wood in the great nest so that we can make gold again," said the magician. Then he hid behind a boulder. "Remember, I am depending on you, my dear son." When Hassan was apprehensively waiting, a great bird flapped down and carried him to its nest on top of the mountain as easily as if he had been a mouse. He cut himself out of the skin and drove off the bird. The voice of the magician came to him, "Throw down the wood! Throw all you can!" Soon Hassan had thrown down all there was in the gigantic nest. "Good, that is all I need," shouted the magician. "I will go now, and you can rot up there for all I care." His mocking laughter echoed in Hassan's ears. Mounting his camel, the magician rode off, leading the second camel with panniers of the precious wood on its sides. Hassan was horrified. How was he to get down the mountain, and would the great bird attack him if he did? He made his way painfully down before the rooks came back, and at last found himself beside the wonderful palace where the magician had said there were Jann, ghouls, and devils. If they were enemies of the magician, perhaps they would help him. The great gates were open, and Hassan made his way from one courtyard to another until he finally arrived at a room where 2 beautiful maidens were playing chess. They did not seem the least bit alarmed by his appearance. "Who are you?" asked one, while the other smiled at him pleasantly. "Hassan of Basra, a jeweler," he replied, and told them his story. "You must stay here with us and be our brother," said the second girl. "We rejoice that you are safe, For did you not pass here a short time ago with that dreadful magician who is our enemy?" "Yes," said he. "He left me on the mountain to die." Then said the youngest girl to him, "Let us tell you our history, for we are not demons or devils, but the daughters of a king. Our father is one of the kings of the Jan, who are good spirits. He has troops, servants, and guards without number. We are 7 sisters, and 5 others are at the moment out hunting. Here in this palace, which is one of the loveliest parts of the world, we live in complete security, placed here by our father, who wants us to meet no humans nor jinn, for he loves us too much to let us get married." "Are you all happy here?" asked Hassan. "Of course, for we have everything which our hearts desire, and when there are weddings or festivals of the Jan, we are taken there and brought back here in all pomp and ceremony, as befits our position and birth," they answered. Then the other sisters, each more lovely than the last, returned, and they accepted him as a brother, begging him to live with them for a while. The days were wonderful for Hassan after that, and he began to feel he had never lived anywhere else. Each day he walked and talked with the princesses, and they gave him a secret room for himself. One day, to his horror, he saw the magician approaching along the same road he himself had been brought, this time dragging a young man. The 7 maidens dressed Hassan in armor, and he set out to do battle with the magician. The old man was too busy skinning a camel to notice him until Hassan cried, "Villainous wretch! I am alive and will avenge myself." With one blow of his sword, he cut off the magician's head. The young man, who was shackled to the magician's second camel, was amazed at Hassan's appearance. "How can I thank you enough?" he asked as Hassan released him. "Go home in peace, brother," said Hassan, and gave the young man the camels, bidding him make speed to his own country as fast as he could. The maidens were delighted with Hassan's bravery, and they all returned to feast at the palace. But while the meal was at its height, a cloud was seen on the horizon. "Hide, Hassan, hide!" cried the maidens. "The troops of our father the king have come to take us on a visit." So he hid himself in the private room, and for 3 days and nights the troops of the king of the Jan feasted in the hall of the palace. On the 3rd day the youngest princess came to Hassan and said, "Brother, now we must go to a wedding at our father's command, and we shall be away for 2 months. During that time treat this as your home and enjoy all its pleasures. But, and be careful of this, or great misfortune will occur, do not open that door." And she pointed to a small door set in the wall of the secret room. After the princesses and the troops had gone, Hassan felt lonely. But after a while he hunted and caught game, making himself his own meals. But the forbidden door again and again caught his eye, until he was no longer able to ignore it. He turned the key in the golden lock and opened it. There was a dark passageway beyond the door. He went up some dark steps, and then came out onto a fine balcony at the top of the palace. He looked out upon beautiful fields, flowers, and fruit trees, with singing birds the like of which he had never heard before. It was such a wonderful place that he felt the exotic flower scents going to his head. There was a great silver lake, like a sheet of glass, and upon it he saw 10 elegant birds alighting. He watched with bated breath from behind a shrub as the exquisite birds drank and preened themselves and sang. They uttered strange and wonderful cries and flew onto the grass, plucking at their shimmering feathers with their talons. And Hassan, to his great amazement, saw them turn into beautiful women before his eyes. 9 birds were beautiful beyond belief, but the 10th bird made Hassan mad with desire. Then, leaving their feather cloaks behind, They leapt into the lake and swam like swans. Hassan watched, his heart in his mouth, and they came out of the water, drying themselves on their feather robes, the loveliest of them all taking great care to dry herself delicately with the feather robe, like a wild bird that has always been free. After they had talked and laughed a while, the chief damsel said, "O daughters of kings, we have spent enough time here. Let us fly away, for we are late indeed." Then they became birds and rose in the air. The swishing of their wings was all that Hassan heard as he looked to see them circle. Then they were gone. Hassan returned to the inner rooms of the palace. His heart was stricken with love such as he had never known before, and he could neither eat nor sleep. He wandered about for days, not caring if he lived or died. Each day he unlocked the door which had been forbidden to him, to gaze at the lake and wait for the sound of the Bird Maiden's wings, but they did not come. Beautiful small wild birds sang in the acacias, but they could not soothe the pain in his heart. Then from the roof he saw the dust cloud approaching, which told him the princesses were returning from the wedding, surrounded by the troops of the king of the Jann. Hassan hid himself till the soldiers rode away, and the youngest princess came to tell him he could feast with them again. Hassan's eyes were lackluster with grief as she looked into his face, and the youngest princess cried, "Hassan, are you unwell? What has happened to you? You know that we are never ill here, for the water which flows from that river heals every ailment." Hassan said, "I am dying of love for the leader of the Bird Maidens. Forgive me, I opened the door, and now I have to pay for that deed." "Please do not tell my sisters," she said, "for they might punish you terribly." "I cannot be punished worse than I am now," murmured Hassan, lying back on his bed. So the youngest maiden went and told the others that Hassan had pined for them while they were gone, and would soon be better now they had come home. But day by day Hassan seemed to get weaker. Soon it was time for the sisters to go hunting, so they left Hassan in the care of the youngest, promising to bring him some fine game to tempt him. "Look after the human," they told her, "for he is our beloved brother." No sooner had they gone than the youngest princess came to Hassan and said, "Come, show me where you saw the bird women. I would dearly like to see them myself." And Hassan managed to raise himself up. Leaning on the girl, he at last arrived with her at the top of the palace. "There they landed," he said, "and there they divested themselves of their feathers, and there I saw her in all her great beauty, and fell hopelessly, utterly in love, sister." Then the princess became very pale and said, "Brother, you have fallen in love with one of the daughters of a king of the Jann who is like our father, and like him immensely powerful. The eldest, whom you have described, is distinguished above all of us in magical guile and wisdom. You are in great trouble if you love her, for you can never have her. Her father is the most powerful of all our kings." "But I must have her, or I will die," said Hassan. "Then," said the youngest princess, "this is what you must do. If you would have her, you must wait till she puts off her feather robe, and possess yourself of it. You must keep it somewhere safe, hidden, and then you can marry her." "I shall come every day until she is here again," Hassan cried. "She shall be my wife, for I can never love any other in the world." The girl told him, "Remember, never give her back that dress once you have taken it, or she will take wing and escape. When you catch her, hold on to her by her long black hair, and her sisters will fly away. Then you will have gained possession of her." Day after day, Hassan returned secretly to the spot where he had first seen the Bird Maidens. He ate and drank with the youngest sister, for now he had something to live for, and he daily grew stronger. At last, when he had almost despaired of seeing them, the air was full of the rush of wings, and the bird maidens landed on the lake. They came to the bank and began to take off their feather robes. The one princess of whom Hassan was so enamoured left hers within a few feet of him, as he stood hidden behind a flowering shrub. With a little cry of joy, she joined the rest in the water. Hassan snatched the robe and put it inside his shirt. After they had swum around for some time, the maidens returned to the bank and began to dress. All except Hassan's beloved. She searched in the grass for her robe, and her face was very close to his. He caught her by the hair and held her in spite of her weeping. The others dressed quickly and flew up into the air, and soon they were gone. Hassan begged the beautiful maiden to forgive him, saying, "I love you, dearest lady, with a pure and true love. Come with me and be my wife." She kicked and bit, but he put his arms around her and, wrapping her in his cloak, carried her gently to his private room. After a while she quietened, and he opened the door to the youngest sister of his hostesses. "I have found her," he cried. "I have caught her." Then the youngest damsel bowed herself down before the beautiful bird maiden, and kissed the ground in front of her, and blessed her. The daughter of the Jan king said icily, "Is this how a daughter of a king of the Jan is treated here in your domain? Do either of you realize how mighty and powerful is my father? Come, give me back my feather robe, and I shall be back home before my sisters have missed me." But the youngest princess talked long and soothingly to the bird maiden, and told her how Hassan loved her, and how he had been their dear brother for many months, never being other than kind and thoughtful to them. The princess of the Jan began to be more at ease, and ate and drank with Hassan when food was brought to the room. At last she actually smiled, and Hassan, now dressed in his finest clothes, bowed low over her hand and said, "O lady of loveliness, be my wife, and I will love you forever, and you will never regret one moment of our life together." Then the other sisters returned from hunting and sent for Hassan to eat with them. He went to the eldest and kissed her brow, saying, "Dear sister, while you were away I opened the door which is forbidden, but I found the loveliest woman in the world to be my wife. Please forgive me for disobeying your command, and let me enjoy life with she whom I adore." At first the sisters were most angry and said, "Ah, so you are like all the sons of Adam after all. You people can never be trusted." "Sisters," said the youngest damsel, "can you blame him, after we left him completely and utterly alone, so far away from anywhere? Let us be glad he has caught his beloved, and now has become well again, for he was wasting away." "What is she like?" asked the other sisters, full of curiosity, not so displeased with Hassan now that they scented a true romance. Then the bird maiden came to them in the main hall, and they were amazed at her beauty and dignity. "O daughter of the supreme king of the Jan," said the eldest sister, "take this human being and be happy together, for we can vouch for his character. He has told us that he has burned the dress of feathers, and we beg you to forget your native land." Then one of the damsels deputized for her in the matter of the marriage contract, and she and Hassan became man and wife. For 40 days and nights they celebrated the wedding in the palace, and at last Hassan and the bird maiden set out for Basra, so they could live together for the rest of their lives. "Visit us sometimes," said the 7 princesses of the Jan, as they said goodbye to the newly married pair, now at the head of a vast caravan of laden camels, carrying gifts of great price. "And let us not wonder what happens to you, Hassan, for you will always be our dear brother." Then they threw flower petals on the couple and Hassan and his bride agreed that they would never forget them or neglect them in the years ahead. At last Hassan arrived in the courtyard of his old home. His camels were tethered to the posts outside, and he knocked loudly on the door. When the mother of Hassan opened it, she could scarcely believe her eyes. "My son, I had given you up for dead," she wept, "but now I am happier than I have ever been in my life." "This is my beautiful wife from a far land," said Hassan. "Let us come in, and we will show you many rich presents which we have been given." So the mother of Hassan was enchanted by the beautiful young wife, and took her to her heart. But soon the mother-in-law said to her son, "Hassan, we must go to the great city of Baghdad, so that you may have a big shop befitting your new dignity. Let us leave Basra and become important in Baghdad." So Hassan moved his belongings and established himself in a new shop which sold fine gold ornaments, and his wife and mother were both pleased. The house of a minister of the royal court was to be sold, as the minister needed a larger one, and Hassan bought it. After 1 year of happily married life, Hassan's wife bore him a son, Nazir, and again a year later another son, Mansur. Hassan's happiness was complete. Never, he felt, had a human being had so much joy on earth. 3 years had passed since the damsels of the Jann had begged Hassan not to forget them, and one day he said to his wife, "My dear, I will go now and see my 7 sisters again, and tell them how things have prospered for us." Sweetly his wife agreed to his going, and he loved her even more. Then he went to his mother and told her the secret of his wife's feather cloak, and bade his mother keep it safely in the chest buried in the courtyard. "For," he said, "if my wife were ever to find that, she would fly away and leave me, and I could never get her back." His mother agreed to keep the cloak safely hidden, and Hassan rode away with many presents for the 7 damsels. For the first 3 days after Hassan's going, the Bird Maiden showed her mother-in-law great respect, and they exchanged all sorts of confidences. Then, wheedlingly, the young wife said, "Mother, let us go to the baths today. All the time I have been in Baghdad, I have never been. Will you take me and the children? I have always wanted to go." So they went. After an hour, the older woman wanted to return home, but the younger one was enjoying it so much that she asked if she could stay on longer. The mother of Hassan gave permission and left. Now a favourite of the commander of the faithful happened to be in the baths that day, and took back to the Princess Zubaydah all the gossip from the baths. She mentioned that a beautiful woman with 2 children as lovely as moons were at the baths, and the princess wanted to know who she could be. "Ah, princess, I went home with her to find out," said the favourite, "and she lives in the house of the minister of my lord's court, which now belongs to a goldsmith from Basra. But, my lady Zubaydah, if my lord could only see her, I am sure he would want her to grace the harem." "As beautiful as that," said the princess reflectively. "I would like to see her. Send a message that she must come to me, and bring the children too." The Princess Zubaydah was always looking for suitable slaves as presents for her lord, and this strange woman seemed to have possibilities. So Mesrour, a trusted eunuch of the royal harem, was sent to the house of Hassan, the goldsmith of Basra. "The lady Zubaydah, wife of the commander of the faithful, sends an invitation for the lady of the house to visit her," said the eunuch when the mother of Hassan opened the door, "and she should bring her 2 children with her also," he added. Hassan's mother was greatly worried, as she felt they should not go in the absence of her son, but the eunuch smoothly explained that it was a courtesy extended as a great favour, and so the Bird Maiden and her children went to the royal harem. The Princess Zubaydah was delighted with the looks of the fair stranger and her children, and showed her many of her finest garments. "Have you any to match these in your country?" she asked, as priceless silks and brocades were paraded before her. "Yes, I have a feather robe so fine and so delicate it has all the colours of the sun and the moon," said the Bird Maiden with much pride. "Indeed," said the Princess Zubaydah, "I should like to see that, a robe made of feathers. Show it to me." "My husband's mother keeps it hidden, and will not let me have it," replied the Bird Maiden. She had overheard her husband telling his mother to keep it safe before he left. "You, dear lady, ask her to give it to me, and I will show it to you with great joy." No, there is no such thing as a feather robe," said the mother-in-law. "She exaggerates. Why, how could there be a robe of feathers all the colours of the sun and moon?" But the princess felt that the girl was telling the truth, and sent the eunuch Mesrour to find it. Find it he did, after a short delay, and soon the beautiful robe, with not one feather missing, was once more in the young wife's hands. She took it with trembling fingers from the eunuch, while the mother-in-law bit her lip and put it on. It fitted just as it had 3 years before, and she put her sons inside the robe, singing like a bird, walking like a bird, fastening the feathers around her. She preened and pirouetted before the ladies of the court, and the princess especially was delighted at the sight of so much loveliness. "Truly, it is a wonderful dress," said the Princess Zubaydah. "Can you show us how to fly in it?" No sooner were the words out of her mouth than the Bird Maiden shook out her wings and flew away, taking her children with her. She called to her mother-in-law as she went, "If my husband wants to find me, tell him I am going to the islands of Wak-Wak." Then she was lost from sight. When Hassan returned, his mother was not long in telling him the story, ending with the last words of his wife as she flew away. "The islands of Wak-Wak!" shouted Hassan in his grief. "Where are they? The only ones who would know are my 7 enchanted sisters. I will ask them." So he turned about and returned to them. They listened to the tale without speaking, even as he cried, "Where are the islands of Wak-Wak? For find her I must, even if I lose my life in the attempt." But the 7 sisters would not tell him, saying, "Be patient, you will be cured of your love in time, for you cannot go to those islands." However, the younger sister pleaded, as usual, with the 6 others on Hassan's behalf, and at last they told him. "Your wife must want you," they said, "or else why should she tell your mother where she had gone?" Now they had a powerful uncle, and his name was Abdel-Kudus. He loved the eldest damsel best of all, and came to see her once a year, bringing many presents. They had told him about Hassan the goldsmith on his last visit, and he was delighted when they gave him the news that Hassan had cut off the head of the villainous magician. "If anything evil should ever happen to that young man," he said, "let someone put a few grains from this pouch on the coals of a brazier, and I will come at once to help." The eldest damsel said to the youngest, "Quickly, get that pouch my uncle gave me, and let us summon him." As soon as the grains were burning on the coals, a puff of smoke appeared on the horizon. It turned out to be the girl's uncle, riding upon an elephant. "What do you require, O daughters of my brother?" asked the old man, as soon as they had greeted him. "Uncle, our interest in Hassan the goldsmith has prompted us to request your help," was the reply. "Will you kindly assist him?" "I will," said the uncle, "but no doubt this man is in a very dangerous situation. Is that not so?" "It is," said they, But what is he to do?" "Mount up behind me on the elephant," said he, and after kissing them all goodbye, Hassan did so. The animal took them on for a very long way, until they arrived at a sapphire-blue mountain. The uncle dismounted, and so did Hassan, and Hassan was given these instructions. "Stay here until I can have some conversation with one within, and come in when you are sent for." The old man then dismissed the elephant with a magical phrase, and it disappeared. Abd el-Quddus knocked 3 times on the rock, and a gigantic slave with a sword appeared. He kissed the sheikh's hands and opened the door. The sheikh said to Hassan, "I will be as quick as I can. Have patience." He went through the door with the apparition, and the door clanged shut. It seemed an age to Hassan before the sheikh returned, but he was smiling. He took Hassan by the hand through another door, but this time it opened out onto a vast desert. Outside that door stood an Arab steed, saddled and bridled. "Take this horse," said the old man, "and ride as far as it will let you. When it stops, knock upon the door of brass, and there will come out to you a sheikh all in black. Here is a letter. Give it to him. He will take it away. If he comes back himself, you may proceed further. If one of his young men comes, sword in hand, you will know your mission has failed. Here is the letter. If you need to escape, call upon the elephant. His name is Fil. He will take you back to safety with the daughters of my brother, and you shall have a better wife than this one which has flown from you now." "By all that is holy," cried Hassan, "I shall never love another. How can I go to these islands of Wak-Wak that I may see her and my children again?" "The islands of Wak-Wak are 7 islands, and the inhabitants of those islands are many thousands of virgins, like a great army," replied the sheikh. "I do not know how you can find the island where your wife is now hidden, but if you must go on, then you must. Farewell." Before Hassan could thank him, he thrust a letter into his hand and disappeared. Hassan drove his own steed forward. Finally, Hassan, in great anguish and uncertainty, arrived at the place of which the sheikh had spoken. The horse stopped, neighed, and pawed the ground with its front right hoof. Hassan dismounted, placed the reins on the pommel, and the horse kicked the sand. Hassan knocked at a great brass door, and the sound echoed strangely. After a few moments, an old sheikh dressed all in black came to the door and opened it. Hassan saluted him. "Father, please will you read this letter and tell me if I am allowed to proceed further?" said he. The old man bowed his head and smiled, taking the letter. "Wait here," he said in a low voice. The door opened again. It was the sheikh himself, all dressed in white instead of the young man to kill him. Hassan felt jubilant, and his heart soared. Inside the cave, Hassan looked around him. It was as large as any palace hall he had ever imagined, gleaming like purest crystal. Everywhere great lamps of brass hung from the roof of the cave. They went through this area and at last came out to an open garden, where fruits and flowers grew in profusion. Birds sang, and the sound of water gushing from fountains was everywhere. The sheikh signed to Hassan to sit with him on a seat of marble, and 4 sheikhs similar to himself approached. "Recite the tale of your doings to these sheikhs and myself," said the man in white, "and take your own time about it. There is no hurry." So Hassan told his story. "Is that the vile magician who caused you to be taken to the top of the mountain, whom you have slain?" one cried. "Yes, it was," said Hassan. Then the 4 sheikhs looked at each other and pursed their lips and said, "O sheikh of sheikhs, this young man has suffered enough." They looked at Hassan and with the kindest expression in their eyes said, "He should be reunited with his wife." O Aburuwash, for the sake of your brother Abdel Kudus, give him further help." Then the sheikh in white wrote a letter with his own hand and gave it to Hassan. "Take this, and I shall summon transportation for you." He clapped his hands, and a gigantic jinn appeared, one of the flyers, who stood before the sheikh with an expression of the deepest respect. "You are Danash?" asked the sheikh. "Yes, master, Danash, son of Faktash," he replied. "Take this human being to the land of Camphor, so that he may give this letter to its king," said the sheikh. Hassan then was lifted up onto the broad shoulders of Danash the flyer. "One last word," said the old man. "When you are taken into the heavens on the shoulders of this Efreet, and you hear the praises of the angels, utter not a word, or you will fall." "I promise," said Hassan, and thanked the old man from the depth of his heart. "Whatever the king of the Camphor land asks you to do, you should do," said the sheikh, "and may your affairs prosper." As he spoke, the Efreet rose high into the air, and Hassan heard the angels at their prayers, but he kept his mouth shut and remained safe on the shoulders of Danash. A night and a day they flew, and then came to a land that was as white as snow, the land of Camphor. Hassan dismissed the Efreet and took the letter to the king's palace. Now the king of the land of Camphor was a magnificent ruler called Harun, and he received Hassan kindly. "Come to me tomorrow morning," he said. "Now go and rest." A court official took Hassan to the house reserved for guests, and he slept like the dead all night. At the early morning court of the magnificent king, Hassan was the first admitted. The king was reading the letter and shaking his head over it. "What is your condition?" the king asked Hassan. "Ill," replied Hassan, "but I seek to remedy that." "I send ships to the islands of Wak-Wak, and sometimes they send ships to me," said the king. "Tomorrow one of their ships will come here," he continued, "and you shall embark upon it. I will have you placed on board under my protection." "King, may you live forever," said Hassan fervently. "I would give my life for even one glimpse of my wife." "Take great care, or you may be in danger beyond estimation," warned the king. "You are lucky that you arrived at this time. I hope that your luck will hold." So next day Hassan was sent on board one of the ships bound for the islands of Wak-Wak, under the king's protection, and the ship set sail. For the next 10 days the ship went on, through shark-infested seas, till its anchor was thrown out, and Hassan stepped ashore. On the dockside there were 1,000 or more beautiful divans, with cushions and fine cloths draped on them, as if a huge concourse of people were in the habit of using them to rest. He hid behind one of the divans and waited silently. When evening came, there arrived a great company of female soldiers, converging upon the place where the divans were arranged. Each soldier threw herself upon one divan and discoursed with her neighbor. They were dressed in chainmail, with swords in their hands. Hassan saw they were all tall and most beautifully formed, notwithstanding their rough attire and warlike equipment. They wore steel helmets with intricate designs and had thongs binding their legs. Hassan waited until he saw one approach his divan and called to her in a low voice, "Oh, help me! I beg you not to kill me." She looked at him with great blue eyes full of fire, her sword in her hand ready for action. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Hassan," he answered. "Take under your protection one who has lost his wife and children and does not want to lose his life in search of them without putting up a fight." She was intrigued, and he heard her say, "Hassan, my son, you are fortunate you have chosen an old woman, for I fear one of my young officers would have killed you. Hide under this divan and wait. What is to be will be." Hassan concealed himself, and the time passed with stories of war and battles far too bloodthirsty for his tender heart. The female army disported themselves, and told tales and laughed loudly like the soldiers they were. Now the woman he had spoken to appeared in the darkness and handed him a coat of mail and chainmail trousers, just like those which the women wore, and signed to him to put them on over his own clothes. She then gave him a steel helmet and beckoned him to follow her. He did so, and she led him to a tent which was obviously that of the commander, from the pennants fluttering outside. He saw her, now that she was without her armour, to be old and hideous, pockmarked with smallpox, grizzled of head and bald of face. The only thing good about her was her candid blue gaze. Appealing to her humorous eyes, Hassan begged for sanctuary. She asked him, "How in the world did you get here? And why and how long do you expect to live now that you have arrived?" And she slapped her hip, laughing. Hassan answered as best he could, and she was so impressed by his replies that she promised him her protection as commander of the army. Hassan thanked his lucky stars that he had chosen her. The commander then sent instructions to her officers to take the army out in battle order and to rehearse for their next foray. None was to remain in the camp under pain of death. As soon as they had all marched away, the old woman told Hassan that she was called Shawahi and that she was in possession of news for him. "Your wife, of whom I have heard, is on the 7th island of the islands of the Wak-Wak. The distance from here is very far and fraught with danger," she said. "I must go, whatever the perils," said Hassan. She nodded approvingly. "You must go past the island of the hyenas, the place where the lions roar, the island of birds where terrible birds of prey utter horrible cries continually. Then you must pass over the land of the jinn, where the flames rise from the ground and no man can live in peace. But I will take you, and we shall pass all these places and more, till we come to a great river, and this river extends to the islands of Wak-Wak. Do you understand the dangers?" "I do, but I would go to the ends of the world," said Hassan fervently, "for I love my wife, and I believe she loves me." "Do you realize that you may lose your life?" asked the female commander. "Yes," said Hassan stoutly, "and if you will help me, I am ready to go now." "Those islands get their name from the trees which have heads fixed upon their branches, which continually raise their eyes to heaven and cry, 'Wak-Wak,'" she told him. "I will make all arrangements, and we shall go when my soldiers return." "So be it," said Hassan, and prayed to Allah that he might be successful. By dawn, the entire army returned, and Hassan heard the commander address them and tell them that she was leading them on an expedition to the dreaded islands of Wak-Wak. Each woman raised her spear in the air and cheered. The commander was a popular one with the troops. Dressed in mail, Hassan left at the side of the female chief, full of courage and strength of purpose. The jingling of the harness, neighing of horses, the rattle of swords in their scabbards was music to his ears. Sometimes they travelled by road, sometimes by sea. Suffice it to tell that at long last Hassan looked upon the green islands of Wak-Wak, where the heads, impaled upon the branches of trees, continually cried out, "Wak, wak!" and those pitiful cries pierced the hearts of whoever heard them. "Now, Hassan," said the commander, pointing to a wondrous palace, "there lies the place where your wife lives. Wear this cap of invisibility. It will take you safely into the very midst of her father's guards. Go, and blessings upon you." Then she turned her troops about and departed. Lean as a greyhound, sunburned as dark as a Moor, still as strong as when he began his search, Hassan went to the palace. It was guarded by heavily armed men, soldiers of the king of the Jann. But with the magic cap he was able to enter the gate and penetrate to the room where, on a bed covered with a cover of gold brocade, his wife lay asleep. After the long campaign, his grueling marches and long rides on horseback, voyages by sea and land, Hassan felt he could have shouted aloud at seeing at long last that beautiful face. But having a care for his safety, he bent over the bed and whispered in her ear, "I am here, my beauty of beauties. Here is Hassan, come to take you away." When she awoke and looked around, he took off the cap of invisibility, and she saw him. The Bird Maiden cried out, "Hassan, it is not safe for you to be here. You will be killed if you are seen." "I have got so far without being killed, my love, and I shall get you away safely too," he said. He quickly told her the story of the last few months' journey. "I never thought to see you again," she murmured. "It has been so long since I returned here." "Is it not enough that I have come?" he answered. "I shall take you and the children away with me." "You cannot. It is impossible," she said. "You do not know how well guarded we are. My father would never let me escape. Go now, and save yourself. Forget about me." "You cannot take from me the spoils of my victory," answered Hassan boldly. "I have won my way to you, and as you are my wife, I shall take you." "You must know what we would have to face on the way back, and it may be death for you any moment now," cried the Bird Maiden. Then his 2 sons came into the room and knew their father, and he played with them a while. The Queen, the Bird Maiden's mother, then knocked on her daughter's door, saying, "What is this I hear, a man's voice? Open to me that I may punish you, for no one of the human sort may be allowed in this holiest island of all our islands." So Hassan straightway put on his cap of invisibility and hid from the Queen's sight, and she went away satisfied that there was no one there. That evening, as dusk came, Hassan came out of the closet of his wife's room and said to her, "Come, my love, you take one child and I will take the other, and we will go from here, for I am strong and you must go with me." So they each took a child in their arms, and Hassan, with his cap of invisibility, led her through the guards, who lay on the palace floors in 2s and 3s like sleeping dogs. Just as they got to the palace grounds, they met an old woman. "Let me help you," she said. "O daughter of the Jan, I see your husband, who is human, though he has a cap of invisibility on his head. Take this reed and strike it 3 times upon the ground, and Ifrits will come to bear you away." The Bird Maiden thanked her and gave her a jewel from her finger. The Bird Maiden struck the reed 3 times upon the ground, and 2 gigantic Ifrits came, bowing low in homage. "We obey the owner of the magic reed," they said. "Give us your orders and we shall perform our duty." "What distance is there between here and Baghdad?" asked Hassan. "Not far, if we take you upon our shoulders," said the Ifrits. And Hassan said, "Then let us go to Baghdad, now." One Ifrit took the Bird Maiden and 1 child, and Hassan was lifted upon the shoulder of the second, his younger son in his arms. The air was filled with a strange rushing sound, the night became black without a star in the sky, and Hassan felt himself being carried at great speed through the air. In less time than it takes to tell, the 2 Ifrits landed safely in Hassan's garden in Baghdad, and placed Hassan, his wife, and the children safely on the ground. Dismissing the Ifrits, Hassan loudly knocked on his own door, calling his mother with joyful anticipation. His wife, standing beside him, looked at him with her eyes shining with love. In a few moments he heard the bolts being drawn, and his mother opened the door. The moment she saw them, the old woman shrieked with happiness. Then she clasped them in her arms one by one. Hassan vowed to himself that never again would he ever leave his home or his family. His wife went to her own apartments, and dressed herself and the children in their finest clothes. "Husband," said she when Hassan went in to her, "I swear that I have learned by being parted from you that I love you with all my heart and will never leave you again. Light the fire," she continued, and when he did so, she dropped the feather robe into the flames. Then she returned shyly to Hassan's arms. Within a few weeks, Hassan once more became the goldsmith of Basra, and they lived happily the rest of their lives.